Hello. Hello.
I'm going to take a picture of all you guys, and I'm going to do my best not to swear. I thought Jamie, when he was up here singing, he kept saying F, but it was fun. I swear. Come on, give me something. Give me something, kids. Yeah. Woo! Thank you. My name's Bill Ward. I'm from Calgary, Alberta. My roots are from Driftpile First Nations up by Lesser Slave Lake. I'm half Cree, half white, all addict, all alcoholic. I know zero of my Indigenous family, and I know all of my white family. As we heard the lady from the mustard seed tell part of her story, in a nutshell, it was pretty bad, right? Like there's a lot of trauma, a lot of devastation there, and you guys don't know. Most of you don't know. There might be some of you that know. You go on to any nation in Canada, and that's reality. That's the reality. I worked for Tsuut'ina First Nation doing client liaison work, working directly with the community. I worked with 5 different people. I didn't know they were related. And then I was working with this other woman. And in one of the meetings, one of my bosses said, "That's the mother of all 5 of those people you're working with." And my jaw just dropped, because the devastation of drugs, alcohol, spiritual malady, suicide, and all the good stuff on our nations is unbelievable. You think it's bad here in Edmonton? The things that you don't hear about that happen in First Nations community, the sexual abuse is rampant and never gets talked about. And it is one of the roots of most of addictions within First Nations. And we can go into the whole story of, the residential schools and before that, but that's not what I'm here for today. But I just want to bring awareness to that. As we drove into this conference center down Jasper, it's not hard to tell that 80% of the people on Jasper Ave that are homeless and snooping through garbage cans and, flailing in the streets are Indigenous, man. But I want you to understand that they didn't choose that, okay? They didn't choose that. And they don't have much of a choice either. Because when you grow up in a nation that is riddled with the things that I just talked about, and you have generations and generations of that stuff happening, you don't really have a choice. You got to live in survival mode. And survival mode at some point means alcohol and drugs for a lot of us. And, it's really sad. Just quickly with part of my story, I was in treatment by the time I was 17, full-blown alcoholic. I remember when I was 13 or 14, growing up in Calgary, white community, Catholic school, being Indigenous, I just basically fought my whole life through school. I get to be about 14, 15 years old. I'm standing at the turning point of life, kind of looking at life going, what's the point? What's the point? I heard that life was supposed to be fun and, you're supposed to have all these fun things happen in life. And I'm 15 years old going, bullshit. That's not the way my life was. And that's not the way I saw life at all. But I did find weed, and then I found booze, and life got a lot better. I like that effect that was produced by alcohol and drugs. It gave me a sense of belonging, gave me a sense of blah, 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 connection, got laid my first time. I didn't even have sober sex till I was over 22 years old ever in my life. I didn't know what sober sex was like. I was so scared to have sober sex when I finally had it. I didn't know what it would be like, right? Because that was the only life that I knew. By the time I was 18, I almost killed a guy in a fight when I was drunk. And I work today in Drumheller Penitentiary 2 days a week, and I see many guys doing life in there for a bad night. They had a bad night, and they're doing life in prison today. And I work with these guys individually every Thursday and Friday. I get to hear their stories, and what the other funny thing is 60 or 70% of them are Indigenous, right? They never had a chance. They don't know. And they think that that's what life is. And then I hear the stories about what happened on the res for those kids, for those guys. They never had a chance, right? And so, 17, I'm in treatment. By the time I'm 22, I'm ready to put a gun in my mouth. And I know I don't want to do that. I finally quit drinking on a prayer at 22 years old, praying to a God that I didn't care for because I was, I went to Catholic school and built resentment against that type of God. And I prayed to our God at 22 years old to allow me to stop doing whatever it was I was doing because I didn't want to live and I didn't want to die and I couldn't stop drinking. And I finally stopped, and 6 months later I'm going batshit crazy because alcohol was my solution, man. And then I didn't have it anymore. Now what? 6 months later, I'm back at that spot where I was at 15 years old. What am I going to do now? I don't have my solution. But what I did have is, and I grew up in this, and we all grew up in this. This is one of the biggest things I talk about. I have a podcast called the UDRCast. I do videos, Billboard Life videos. I have a lot of things going on I'll talk about later. But one of the things that I learned, and I learned all of these things my whole life, was money was supposed to make you happy. Things are supposed to make you happy. I also learned that if you have pain, go take a pill and run away from it. Or go to that place and get away from it. I learned everything I learned through the environment that I lived in, which was social media, television, radio, my mom, my dad, the culture I lived in. And money was one of the biggest things that was supposed to make me happy. So I'm 22 years old, standing at the turning point going, what the hell's the point anyway? But I didn't want to die, so I said, how can I get happy? And the world told me, make money, man. So that's what I decided to do. So I spent the next couple of years building a company. It was called Ward's Ground Thaw Services in Calgary. I did ground frost removal. I unthawed frozen ground for contractors. Basically pioneered that in this part of the world, in Alberta and BC. And I had 10 glycol machines. I was doing about $500,000 a year burning coal. I had radiant heaters. And, by the time I was 28 years old, I was doing about $1 million a year. And in that time, I met my wife, Shannon, who I'd known since we were kids. I actually bought drugs off of her boyfriend. He was one of the main suppliers in Calgary with their gang. And I used to buy them from my wife, because that's what we have to do to survive, right? And then by the time I was 30, I was making $2 million a year. And by the time I was 36, I was making $3 million a year. But all through that process of building up this company, I'm an addict and an alcoholic. I put my solution down, which was drugs and alcohol. I still smoke weed, and now I build a business. My ego loves money, man. My ego loves relief. Part of the disease of addiction is it's validation, and I need relief. And I got a lot of relief through money, through society validation, through the name on my truck that said Wards, through people saying, oh, you're doing so good. And, I love that kind of stuff. But it can't sustain. So I treat my untreated alcoholism with drugs and alcohol till I don't have that to treat it with. And then I treat it with women, with sex, with pornography, with gambling, with trucks, with money, And that doesn't work either. And my anger was ramping up, my anger since I was a kid, man. By the time I'm in my mid-20s, I'm like road raging, pulling people out of their vehicles, punching them out, driving around the city with my family. I got 3 lovely daughters, Lila, Lucy, Jillian, my beautiful wife, Shannon. And I'm doing high-speed chases and pulling people out of their cars and beating the shit out of them or jumping in their car. High-speed chases all over Calgary with my family, causing them like crazy pain and trauma. My daughter's screaming at me, what are you doing, Dad? I'm just like, shut the fuck up. This is what's going down right now. I'm powerless. I'm powerless over drugs and alcohol, but I'm much more powerless over the subconscious ideas, behaviors, and pain and grief, guilt, and shame that drive my life. That's what I'm powerless over. And then I get to 36 years old. My brother's missing. He's in Winnipeg. Drug alcohol addict also. My dad, who's now spent 30 years in recovery, calls me up and says, son, I want you to help me look for your brother. I'm like, well, I don't really like my brother. He does drugs and alcohol, and I'm a business owner now. He's like, I need your help. I said, okay, let's go. So we went there. I got there a day ahead of him, had my brother's picture, went all through Winnipeg showing people my brother's picture. No one knew who he was. Downtown, north side, drug addicts, alcoholics, homeless people, showing everybody, nope, don't know him. And this one guy said, yeah, I know him. I think I've seen him before. I'm like, really? Can you take me to him? He's like, yeah, sure. He jumps in my car, drives me to the north end of Winnipeg. And if you ever been to the north end of Winnipeg, you never want to go to the north end of Winnipeg. It's pretty nasty, pretty hardcore, mostly Indigenous again. And I go up to this house. It was a crack house. And the guys in there say, well, if you want to look around for your brother here, you got to smoke some crack in front of us to prove you're not a narc. And that's just the way the world works when you're in that business, that way of life. And I'm not a crackhead. I wasn't a crackhead. I fired guys that worked for me that did hard drugs, smoked crack, whatever. They didn't work for me long once I found out. But I wasn't worried because I was looking for my brother. So I go into this crack house and I grab this pipe and a couple hits of that crack and nothing really happened. I could feel it. Didn't find my brother there. Found him the next day. Came back to Calgary and wanted to find crack. So for the real deal addict and alcoholic, I believe there is an allergy of the body and the obsession in the mind can kick off. I hadn't used drugs or alcohol in over 15 years. And at that moment, when I took those hits of crack, I had just set off the allergy in my body and the phenomenon of craving in my body and the obsession of my mind. I came back to Calgary and I did not want to use drugs, but I had to use drugs because it was on now. And then I did it. And in 6 years, I systematically destroyed my life, my family's life. I lost my $1 million house, all my money. My family was homeless. I was homeless. And life was shit. I had nothing. And my wife hated me. My kids didn't know what was going on. And I didn't know what to do. And I just wanted to die. The only two things I couldn't put in the end of a crack pipe was a trailer that was owned by my wife, was in her name, and a boat. I had to ask my wife if I could live in the trailer on my foreclosed property while she lived in the crawl space at our old nanny's house. And those were dark days, man. And then my dad, who was in recovery, I asked him to take me to a meeting. He said, son, I've been waiting 30 years for you to ask me that question. He took me to a meeting, which was 9 years ago. I just celebrated my 9th year about 2 months ago. How much time do I got?
2 minutes, 30 seconds.
Okay. So my dad takes me to my first meeting and I start journey of recovery. And part of that journey of recovery is I had to stop the substance use first. And that was a 6-7 year deal with that crack cocaine. Started out pretty light on that first year, but by the 6th year, it was all day, every day. And I hid it from my wife. I hid it from my family. She didn't know, actually. And because I had so many business dealings going on, she didn't know what was happening with the money. And I'm a great liar. And I lied really, really well. And she didn't know. She thought I was cheating on her and doing all sorts of shit, but I was cheating on her. I was cheating on her with crack cocaine because I couldn't stop. I couldn't leave it alone. And then I went to these meetings. I started doing some things differently. Started hearing people sharing my story. And I heard a guy share how he was also addicted to sex and anger and had no power of choice in how he lived his life. That's what I connected with. I connected with him having no power to pick up the first substance. Because whenever I picked up as an addict, I picked up sober. I was sober when I picked up usually. And I always wondered, why do I pick up sober when I know that it destroys my life? He explained that to me. And he explained to me a lot of things that I didn't understand. And I just followed this guy's lead. What I had to learn in my journey of recovery is I had to shut the F up, sit down, and listen to somebody else. And I did that. And I still do it today. And I remember as I was going through my early journey of recovery and doing the thing, helping others, going to meetings, trying to build my business back. And I know when I first came in, I wanted my business back. That was all I wanted. And I got 2.5, 3 years in, and I got my career back. I was making $130,000, working for a company, and I was director of operations for a coatings company. And I'm sitting at my desk, and it dawned on me one day. It was just like an epiphany, a punch in the face. And my phone was always on my desk. And I'm sitting there typing at the computer, doing my thing, and it just hit me like a ton of bricks. And it was like, boom. And it was like, I don't want to do this anymore. And that little part of me is like, you don't want to do what anymore? I don't want to do this job anymore. And that other part of me is like, dude, that's all you wanted. You got your job back. You got your career back. That's all you ever wanted. Just do that. Don't worry about it. You got bills to pay. And right here where it matters, where God lives, God told me, you can't do that anymore, bro. I couldn't wait for that phone to ring because I knew it was an alcoholic and addict that needed help because I'd helped so many up to that point. And I couldn't wait for that phone to ring. And then I was in a dilemma because I had $5,000 a month to pay, my $2,000 a month child support, plus the bills that I had and, all the things that we got to pay for. And I didn't know how to leave this job that I knew in my soul I couldn't sell myself out anymore. But I'd sold myself out my whole life, and I went against myself. You know what the definition of shame is? Anyone? Dishonoring one's own consciousness. I've dishonored my own self my whole life. And I knew I couldn't do it anymore because I'd done so much work in my recovery. And I wasn't going to do it, but I didn't know how to not do it. But I talked to my Creator, and at that point, my Creator was my dead grandma. Because I didn't like God, but I loved my dead grandma. And she was out there somewhere, and she wanted the best for me. So I talked to her one day. As I drove my new Mustang back to the office, I pulled it over, and I put the seat back. And I said, Grandma, I said, I know that you know everything that's going on, and you know that I want to help alcoholics and addicts, but I don't know what to do because I have this job that I just wanted, but I don't want it. She's like, I understand, Billy. I said, Grandma, how can I go help people when I don't make enough money doing that because it doesn't pay well? And she said to me, just like I'm saying this to you, she said, Billy, don't worry about it. You go help addicts and alcoholics and you help people and I'll take care of you. You don't worry. And I knew at that moment I could quit my job. 2 weeks later, I put my notice in and I quit my job. And that was 4.5 years ago. I've prayed and meditated every step of the way, and I've asked God for guidance, clarity, direction, and He's given it all to me. He's taken me back to my culture. I'm a 4th-year sun dancer. He's taken me to all over Western Canada and to Timmins doing recovery shit. I go to First Nations communities 2 days a week, Monday and Tuesday. I work directly with the population on a program that I built that's out of the box. And what it is, it's about building friendships with people's hearts and planting seeds of recovery and inspiring people to take the step to go in here where the problem is. The problem isn't out here. It's right here. It always has been here. So I inspire these people to do what it takes to take the step. And then I help guide them on the way, but I can't do it for them. I can only show them what I did. I go to Drumheller Penitentiary 2 days a week, and I do the same thing with the men. I'm raw, I'm real, and I touch people's hearts through the passion and forcefulness of my words because I love people. And though they come back, even though they might hate me and be pissed off at me for a while, because love always pierces pride. And some people don't even know why they don't like me. I know why. Because love interrupts their pride and their way of thinking. That's my job. I'm here to change the way people think and open up those parts of them so that they take that opportunity to try something different. I do a podcast. I'm doing a new podcast. It's a social impact podcast. My podcast is very successful. I go around the country now speaking, doing workshops, doing things. And it's not because I even look for it. When you work for God and the people work for you. I'll give a shout out to my friend Julie, who came from New West just to work the booth. Shane, who's always there, and my buddy Robbie at the back from Sober Crew Calgary. Sober Crew has 5,000 followers, and he goes and helps people, homeless people every day, and he does the same thing I do, just his way. So does Shane, and so does Julie. So does Jay. So does Empower to Recover. That's what this is about. It's about giving, man. Whoever thought I would get everything I ever wanted through service and giving that I always tried to take out of the world? So if you're new or you're struggling or you don't know what to do with your life, like I've heard many times today, it starts today, man. It starts today. Don't wait, man, because life will pass you by. And if you're a drug and alcoholic, you might not have another day. So I inspire you guys all to take a chance and take responsibility for yourself and quit blaming everybody else. It's nobody's fault. Right? We take that on ourselves when we look within ourselves, build a relationship with Creator, with God, and you're going to be okay, man. I fucking swear. Oops. I almost did the whole thing. But anyway, I just love you. I'm so honored to be here and be a part of this and to be a part of Edmonton. And thank you for allowing me to be here today.